Have you ever had the feeling that something big is about to happen? As if the world were on the brink of a change so profound that nothing will ever be the same again. This is not just a vague intuition, it's something that the great visionaries of history have already warned about, and among them, no one was as enigmatic and precise as Nostradamus. Imagine yourself in 16th century France. The cobblestone streets illuminated by torches, the air heavy with mystery and fear. Amidst this, a man, with a quill in hand, scribbles verses that would echo for centuries. His words foretold the rise and fall of empires, the arrival of devastating wars, and events that would change the course of humanity. But what if I told you that he also predicted the imminent collapse of 3 major nations in 2025? This is not just superstition. Time has passed, but their predictions continue to come true in a frightening way. Which 3 countries are these? And even more importantly, are we already witnessing the first signs of this collapse? Today, we are going to explore Nostradamus' most obscure prophecies, those that point to a dark future that may be unfolding before our eyes. If you want to understand the signs that many ignore, stay with me until the end, because what we are going to reveal might change your view of the future. The cycle of the end of great nations. Have you ever stopped to think about why great civilizations collapse? Is there an invisible pattern that repeats throughout history? And more importantly, are we living this cycle now, without realizing it? If we look back, we will see that no empire lasts forever. Rome, which dominated the world for centuries, fell under the weight of corruption, invasions, and its own overconfidence. The Soviet Union, one of the most feared powers of the 20th century, crumbled from within, corroded by economic crises and a government that lost control. The Ottoman Empire, which once was the center of the world, slowly declined until its definitive collapse. And now, here we are, in 2025, observing the first signs that history might be repeating itself. Nostradamus warned about times of instability, indicating that 3 great nations would be on the brink of collapse. But how to recognize the signs that an empire is about to crumble? Historians identify patterns that always appear before the fall of a great power, political crisis, and loss of confidence in the government, growing social inequality, and popular unstable economy, leading to financial collapse, internal and external conflicts, undermining the strength of the nation. Think, are these signs present in today's world? Nostradamus left enigmatic messages that seem to indicate that the collapse has already begun, and few are noticing. 3 specific countries are in the crosshairs of history, 3 nations that were once powerful, but may be a step away from the abyss. Who are they? And is there still time to change destiny? Let's start with the first. 1. France, the next revolution. The history of France is marked by moments of social upheaval that have shaped the world. But could 2025 be the year of a new revolution? Nostradamus, the enigmatic 16th century prophet, left unsettling verses that seem to alarmingly align with current events. In one of his writings, he mentions enslaved people who will rise with songs and demands, while princes and lords will be imprisoned. If we look at history, this description directly refers to the French Revolution of 1789, an event that overthrew the monarchy and changed the country's destiny forever. But what if this prediction wasn't just about the past? In recent years, France has been the stage for massive protests, from the Yellow Vests in 2018, which set the streets ablaze against social inequalities, to the recent strikes against pension reform in 2023, which brought millions to the streets. Each new uprising seems to indicate a growing popular dissatisfaction, with citizens revolting against a government that many consider disconnected from their needs. Now, let's think about the near future. With the European economy weakened, an ongoing energy crisis, and increasingly deepening political divisions, the question remains, is France on the brink of a new social collapse? If Nostradamus was right, 2025 could be the year when the French political system faces its greatest test since the fall of the monarchy. Are we about to witness the resurgence of a revolutionary uprising? Or will it just be another cycle of instability repeating itself over the centuries? China, the collapse of a superpower? For centuries, China has remained one of the most influential nations in the world. Its accelerated economic growth and its undeniable global presence have transformed it into one of the pillars of the world economy. But what happens when an empire begins to show signs of weakness? Nostradamus, in his enigmatic predictions, described a scenario of abrupt decline, internal conflicts, and a devastating crisis. Are we witnessing this happening before our eyes? In recent years, China has faced challenges that have shaken its stability. Economic growth, which for decades was an unstoppable force, began to slow down drastically. The real estate crisis, driven by Evergrande's bankruptcy in 2021, left millions of investors without answers and exposed deep weaknesses in the country's financial system. Moreover, the decline in the birth rate and the aging population have created an uncertain future for the Chinese workforce. But the challenges don't stop there. Internal political tensions are rising as the government intensifies its control over society. The repression of freedom of expression, the increase in digital surveillance, and the hardening of authoritarian policies show a regime concerned with maintaining its authority at any cost. At the same time, external conflicts, such as territorial disputes in the South China Sea and rising tensions with Taiwan and the United States, could lead to unprecedented confrontations. Nostradamus mentioned the arrival of famine, fire, and blood as signs of the collapse of a great nation. If we look at the challenges China is facing, from economic crises to possible military confrontations, was he predicting the decline of the superpower? What seemed like an indestructible empire may be crumbling from within. If China faces a collapse in 2025, the impact will be global, triggering economic crises, destabilizing markets, and altering the balance of power in the world. The question now is, are we about to witness one of the greatest collapses in modern history? United States, an empire on the brink of chaos? Throughout history, great powers have risen and fallen. The Roman Empire, the Soviet Union, the great kingdoms of the past all had a peak and a moment of decline. But what if the next great nation to crumble is the United States? Nostradamus, in his enigmatic predictions, mentioned a great leader falling like thunder, followed by a period of instability. Could this be referring to modern America? Looking at the current reality, the country faces challenges that threaten its very unity. Political polarization has never been so intense. Disputes between Democrats and Republicans are not just ideological differences, but rather fierce battles that have divided the population irreversibly. Violent protests, distrust in institutions, and an environment of uncertainty make it seem that American democracy is at its most fragile point in decades. Moreover, the economy has been showing worrying signs. The increase in public debt, inflation, and the possibility of an imminent recession leave millions of citizens uncertain about the future. At the same time, social crises, such as the rise in crime and dissatisfaction with inequality, are fueling separatist movements in some states. Could the United States reach a breaking point where the country itself would fragment? Another alarming factor is the external tensions. The United States continues to be involved in indirect conflicts around the world, whether in Ukraine, the Middle East, or the Indo-Pacific. With increasing pressure from China and Russia, the country finds itself forced to act as a pillar of the global order. But how long can it sustain this role? If Nostradamus was right, and a major American leader really falls in 2025, whether by impeachment, scandal, or something even more drastic, could this be the spark for an unprecedented crisis? The signs are everywhere. The collapse of an empire never happens overnight. But could we be witnessing the first signs of the fall of the world's greatest power? What can we learn from this? The Buddhist perspective on change faced with such grim predictions and an uncertain future It is natural to feel fear and restlessness. But should we just wait for the worst? Or is there a wiser way to face the transformations of the world? Buddhism teaches that everything in existence is in constant flux. Impermanence, anicca, is one of the fundamental laws of life. Since ancient times, empires have risen and fallen. Civilizations have been shaped by war and peace, and humanity has always found ways to adapt. Taught that suffering arises from resistance to what is inevitable. We want stability, we seek security, but we forget that the only certainty in life is that nothing remains the same. And instead of despairing over what may come, we should strengthen our minds to navigate these changes with wisdom and clarity. Think about the events in history. When great empires collapsed, new forms of society emerged. The decline of ancient Rome paved the way for medieval Europe. The French Revolution overthrew a monarchy and planted the seeds of democracy. The dissolution of the Soviet Union gave rise to new independent nations. Each collapse was, at the same time, an opportunity for renewal. What can we do in the face of these predictions? Buddhist teachings guide us to practice calmness in the midst of the storm. When everything around seems to crumble, our true strength comes from within. The world may change, but the one who learns to cultivate a serene mind will not be shaken by uncertainty. If the future holds challenges, may we face them with awareness. May we transform fear into understanding, crisis into learning, and the unknown into a new possibility. After all, the fall of one era always marks the beginning of another. How to keep a steady mind in times of chaos. If we are truly on the brink of a global collapse, the most important question is not what will happen, but rather how will we react to it. In times of uncertainty, our greatest tool is not fear, but mental clarity. Buddhism teaches us that an unsettled mind suffers in the face of change, while a trained mind remains steadfast, regardless of external circumstances. Imagine an ocean stirred by a storm. On the surface, the waves are violent, unpredictable, destructive. But in the depths, the waters remain calm, unchanging. Our mind should be like those depths, calm, even when the world around seems to be crumbling. But how to achieve this state of serenity? 1. Accept that change is inevitably the first source of human suffering, is the resistance to change. We want everything to remain stable, the economy, the government, our personal lives. But that has never been the reality of the world. As the Buddha taught, all things that are compounded are subject to dissolution. Empires collapse, nations transform, and life moves forward. Accepting this does not mean being indifferent, but rather understanding that trying to fight against the flow of life only generates suffering. 2. Keep your mind clean and clear. When we are bombarded with alarming news, our instinct is to react with fear and anxiety. But does this help us in any way? Buddhism teaches us to observe our thoughts without being carried away by them. The practice of daily meditation, even if just for a few minutes, trains us not to react impulsively, but rather with wisdom. Before letting yourself be consumed by external chaos, take a deep breath, observe your thoughts, and ask yourself, am I seeing reality as it is? Or am I being carried away by emotions? 3. Choose where to place your attention today. More than ever, we are overwhelmed by information. But does everything we consume do us good? Buddhism teaches the concept of mental consumption. Just as we choose what we eat, we must also carefully choose what we allow to enter our minds. Sensationalist news, heated discussions, predictions of destruction, all of this can poison our inner peace. Instead, seek useful information, but avoid drowning in fear. 4. Find purpose amidst uncertainty. If big changes are really coming, how can we use them to grow? Crises always bring opportunities. The fall of empires can pave the way for new societies. The collapse of old systems can make way for something better. Just as the lotus blooms in the mud, we too can use challenges to find more wisdom, more balance, and more purpose. The world may be changing, but your inner peace doesn't have to change with it. When we become the anchor in the storm, nothing can drag us down. True strength is not in controlling circumstances, but in how we react to them. How to transform fear into wisdom. When we hear predictions about collapses, wars, and crises, our natural reaction is fear. But does this fear help us in any way? Buddhism teaches us that fear only has power over us when we let it dominate our minds. If we know how to observe it without identifying with it, it becomes a tool for awakening, a reminder that we should live with more awareness and purpose. Imagine a traveler lost in a dark forest. He can panic, despair, and become paralyzed by fear, or he can stop, breathe, and use his intelligence to find a safe path. Fear is inevitable, but the reaction to it is a choice. The issue is not to eliminate fear, but to transform it into clarity and action. 1. Observe the fear without letting it take over. When we feel fear, mind starts to create catastrophic scenarios. What if everything falls apart? And if I lose everything? Buddhism teaches us to observe these emotions as clouds in the sky. They come and go, but they are not permanent. The practice of meditation helps us not to identify with fear, but rather to see it as it truly is, a reflection of uncertainty, not an absolute truth. 2. Question negative thoughts. Not everything we think is real. Often, our brain exaggerates dangers and puts us in a constant state of alert. Ask yourself, is this fear based on facts or assumptions? Is there something I can do now to change this situation? What is fear trying to teach me? By questioning our thoughts, we take a step back and regain control over our mind. 3. Focus on what you can control. Many things are beyond our control. The economy, governments, global changes. But there is something we can always control: our actions and our attitude towards difficulties. Instead of getting lost in worries about the future, ask yourself, what can I do today to strengthen my life? It can be something simple, like learning a new skill, building stronger bonds with the people around you, or practicing gratitude for what you already have. When we focus on what is within our reach, we move out of passivity and become agents of change. 4. Use fear as a guide. Fear does not need to be an enemy. If we know how to use it wisely, it can become a teacher. Fear can show us what is truly important. It can remind us to live the present more intensely, and it can help us make more conscious decisions. If Nostradamus was right and great changes are coming, we have two options. We can despair, or we can prepare ourselves mentally and spiritually for what is to come. What do you choose? Life dominated by fear, or transform uncertainty into wisdom? The wisdom of detachment in times of crisis. If everything around us is changing, what is the only thing we can truly possess? Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. We cling to material possessions, status, beliefs, and even the illusion of control. But when all of this starts to crumble, we suffer because we are not prepared to let go. Imagine a man holding a rope in a turbulent river. He clings with all his might, believing that it will keep him safe. But the current is strong, and the more he resists, the more he suffers. The true path to peace is not to cling desperately, but to learn to let go and flow with the current of life. 1. Nothing truly belongs to us. If we analyze carefully, we realize that everything we have is temporary. The house we live in, the possessions we accumulate, even our certainties. Everything can change from one moment to the next. Detachment does not mean abandoning everything and living with nothing, but understanding that nothing is permanent and that we need to be ready to accept changes without resistance. 2. The fear of loss keeps us trapped. Many people live in fear of losing money, status, or security. But doesn't this fear prevent us from truly living? The Buddha taught that the more we try to hold on to something, the more we suffer when we inevitably lose it. If great collapses are to come, those who have learned to let go will suffer less, because they have already understood that life is a dance of impermanence. 3. Focus on what really matters. If you knew that everything could change tomorrow, what would you invest your time in today? We cling to worries, to irrelevant problems, to disputes that lead nowhere. But in the end, what really matters? The connections we create, the wisdom we acquire, and the inner peace we cultivate. If Nostradamus was right, and we are entering a period of global transformation. The greatest gift we can give ourselves is to learn to live lightly. It's not about ignoring the challenges, but about not letting the fear of loss prevent us from enjoying the journey. When we stop clinging to what is fleeting, we find something that no crisis can take from us: true freedom. Is destiny sealed, or can we still change it? Throughout history, we have seen empires rise and fall. We have witnessed powerful civilizations fragment until they become mere memories on the pages of time. Nostradamus left us clues about the future, but the real question is not whether the collapse will happen, but how we will react to it. What we are seeing now: political instability, economic crises, increasingly polarized societies, are symptoms of a cycle that always repeats itself. But is the fate of these nations already written? Or is there still time to change the course of history? Buddhism teaches that nothing is permanent, neither rise nor fall. The world is always changing, and within that change, there is both destruction and renewal. What may seem like the end is often just the beginning of a new era. And you? How do you see these signs? Are we facing the end of an inevitable cycle, or is there still hope for transformation? If there is one thing history teaches us, it is that the future does not belong to those who wait, but to those who understand the signs and know how to act. What will we do with this knowledge? The answer, as always, is in our hands.